So you need to know how to use all these strategies, like, consequences, like cut Wi-Fi and so on and so forth, no more going out with your friends. You need to know how to implement all these consequences with your child, such that they don't feel that you're being unfair.
Right.
They don't feel that you don't understand them.
Right.
They won't lie to you. They won't do things behind your back. That's the last thing any parents want, isn't it?
That's right. Hello and welcome to Catholic Parents Online, a podcast channel where we share tips and resources on Catholic parenting. Presented through the lens of the theology of the body, we will see how we can be gifts to our children in ways that will help them find happiness and flourish in accordance with God's wonderful plan for each and every one of them. My name is John Hui, and I'm your host for this series. Today we're going to talk about a topic which I'm sure many seasoned parents will be very familiar with, managing rebellious teens. Yeah, and to help us with this journey and to accompany us on this journey, we have none other than Mr. Nicholas Lim. Right? Hi, Nicholas. Nicholas is a counsellor, psychologist, family therapist, who has had lots of experience in accompanying parents and families on such journeys. So welcome to the show, Nicholas.
Thanks for having me, John. Really glad to be able to have the opportunity to share with you.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Yes.
So perhaps for the benefits of our listeners, would you like to give a brief introduction of yourself, what you do, your work, your family, and so on?
Sure. So I'm Nicholas. I'm 45 this year.
That's young.
Yeah. I'm married with a beautiful wife, Jerry, with 3 kids. The oldest is 12 this year, followed by 11 and then 8. 2 boys and 1 girl. In my profession, I work as a psychologist for the past 20 years. I work primarily with vulnerable adolescents and their families. This work has brought me to many places, so to speak. I've worked not only in Singapore, but also overseas like India, Vietnam, but also in places like the prisons here, in the residential homes for adolescents, vulnerable ones, and also within the community setting and obviously the church.
Well, sounds like quite a journey you've been through.
Meaningful.
Yeah, praise God for that.
Praise God.
Okay, so we've got the right guy. Okay, so I think this is a rather common scenario, right, in our families, rebellious teens. I mean, I went through that phase as a rebellious teen myself, right? And
Same here.
that was a phase when I was like that, and my goodness, did I give my parents some heck?
Sounds familiar?
Sounds familiar, yes, that's right. But thank God my parents forgave me for my juvenile insolence, yeah? Okay, but I guess this is not uncommon that we see, this phenomenon of having rather rebellious teens in our homes, and sometimes parents finding it difficult to handle the situation, myself included, So perhaps as a start, could you share with us what are the possible factors that could give rise to teenagers becoming rebellious in the first place, Yeah.
Okay, so a very quick background, John. My work is actually guided by neuroscience, right? Why neuroscience? Because I feel that's the most evidence-based for me.
Sure.
Meaning to say that if I were to take some brain images and I look at the images, I'll be able to see very distinctly why we behave the way we behave. So as a psychologist, obviously I want to know why we behave in a certain way, and also the clientele that I primarily work with, which is young people. Right? So in my work over the years, and also in the reading of the literature, I find that actually there's something different, right, between the adults and young people, right, teenagers. And believe it or not,
my brain is slower now. Yeah.
Neuroscience informs us if you expose a stimuli to an adult and an adolescence, right? Say something that's fearing, something that will invoke some anger, for example. 2 parts of the brain will light up for the adults. Primarily, this place called the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. Right? But for the young person, only the limbic system lights up. So that informs me that, hey, we are concerned about certain things. The young person actually thinks or responds very differently from the adults.
Yes.
Right? So as a result of that, the factors you asked about is a lot. Right? So that's already one point of view from a neuroscience perspective. Other psychological theories informs us developmentally they may be seeking out different things at different space of their life. So the factors could be that of developmental needs. Right? Yeah. So there's 2 already for you: developmental needs, neuroscience informs us that developmentally in the brain, neurologically speaking, is very different. So you can imagine the rate at which our brain develops is so different.
Yeah.
Right, among many others.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll chance upon it later on as well.
Yes. I think I understand that the prefrontal cortex probably develops, matures probably at about 25, thereabouts, plus or minus.
As the science informs us, yes.
Yeah. So before that, be prepared for a journey.
Yes, about 10 years, sir. About 10 years.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, we've gone through that, so more or less we know what has happened.
Correct. Exactly.
So would you like to share with us what are the factors that can contribute besides these two, right? What else can contribute to our teenagers becoming so rebellious, in our own homes, and we think we have given them whatever we can as parents, and yet they still behave this way, so to speak.
Yeah, there you go. You just pointed out. We think that we're giving them everything, So that's basically where we are at as adults. We think rationally a lot of times first, and then it's very, very normal, very natural, because as adults, we are fully developed at the prefrontal, and the function of that brain part is primarily responsible for thinking ahead, think of the consequences, right? So, like you pointed out, if we knew that our kids were not studying ahead of time, not doing their homework, we naturally would think that, okay, the consequence would be that of you will fail your exam, you will not be able to make the mark, and so on and so forth. That's the function of the prefrontal cortex, right? But the limbic system is fully developed at the onset of puberty, right? So all young people will be fully, quote-unquote, thinking from the limbic system. Not that they cannot think from the prefrontal, it's developing.
That's right.
Right? So we now will begin to appreciate the fact that because they think through the limbic system, which is primarily responsible for things like making meaning, right? Regulating their hormone systems, right? Memories, right? This is the function of the limbic system. So given for example, same thing, homework, right? What would be meaningful for them? If it was not meaningful for them, they would, quote unquote, think that it was not necessary, but they would not automatically think that it will impact their grades at that point in time.
Right.
Not that they cannot appreciate that, because usually parents will always give them a heads up many times over, sometimes too many. And the kids will say, stop nagging mom, stop nagging dad.
Yeah, sounds familiar, yes.
Sounds very familiar, right?
Yes.
But then we wonder, why do they not appreciate what we are trying to help them appreciate? But at that point in time, they're just, because maybe their friends are online, maybe it's more meaningful to basically go out, for example. So obviously they will respond accordingly. Yeah. Right? Therefore the clash of the mind, I call it, right? So I wrote a book about this, the clash of the mind, because of my 20 years of work. And I illustrate and even describe the difference of approach between the adult and the child, and the constant clash, because the adult is constantly coming from the prefrontal, and natural. No fault of parents, right? No fault of the child as well, because they are primarily coming from the limbic space.
That's right.
Right. So even if they are bored, even if they are angered or frustrated, quote unquote, they are thinking, considering all factors, right? All from the limbic space, right?
Right.
But if the parents are thinking of how then can we then help them appreciate and learn? Otherwise, they will, like, their future will be all gone, right? Then take hope, because there is a way to do that. And I always tell parents, don't lose hope, because you know what to do. It's how to do it.
That's right.
Right. So, for example, I work a lot with people who are gaming. Right. Parents know a lot of things. They will withdraw credits, refrain from giving them the credits. Cut Wi-Fi. That kind of thing. Okay, these are all the what. Right. But it's a question of how will you implement the what.
Yeah, but in my experience, I think the kids know how to get around all these, and they're a lot smarter than us.
A lot of it, right? But to discipline them, parents always wonder, right? But I need to instill discipline. I need to help them manage their own priorities. Of course, you need to do that. They don't know any better.
That's right.
So you need to know how to use all these strategies, like consequences, like cut Wi-Fi and so on and so forth. No more going out with your friends. You need to know how to implement all these consequences with your child, such that they don't feel that you're being unfair. Right. They don't feel that you don't understand them. Right. They won't lie to you. They won't do things behind your back. That's the last thing any parents want, isn't it?
That's right.
Right. So it's about how to actually engage the child, such that the child will offer the information to you, feel that you understand what I'm trying to do or trying to achieve, and I offer this information to you, and then we can work together.
Right. Right. So what we've heard so far, it seems like number one, understand the development where our child is at this stage of his or her life.
Yep.
Number two, understand the needs that our child will have at that point in of their lives.
Yep.
Right. And number three, then learn how to negotiate with them or to work around it in such a way that we would be able to achieve outcomes that both of us are comfortable with, and using means and methods that both agree with.
Yes.
And that the teen will feel comfortable with.
Yes.
So
correct.
perhaps you could share with us some of these secrets then, the secrets of the trade.
Secrets of the
Yes, as to how to manage them in this way. Yeah.
So maybe because you mentioned a few of the items, right? And like for example, understanding, right? So I will always propose using a limbic way to achieve understanding, right? So I mean, give a good example. Maybe say gaming, right? If the child was actually gaming at this point in time, right? And the family is actually waiting downstairs to actually for the child to come down, because there was already a communicated understanding that we will have dinner together, right? But waited for a long time, not coming down yet, not coming out of the room and going to the dining table. Wait 5-10 minutes, still not, right? So in a worst case situation, one of the parents get up, go to the room, shout at the child and say, "If you're waiting so long, we're waiting for like 30 minutes, why are you not coming out?" Right? No understanding. Right? Leave me alone. The child probably shout.
10 minutes more, 10 minutes more.
Exactly, 10 minutes more.
Can't you wait?
Can't
It's just
you
10
wait?
minutes more.
Yeah. So the question here is, how come no understanding? I thought we established this already.
Yeah.
Then the parents are frustrated.
Yeah.
Right? So in this kind of scenario, how do you establish understanding? Do you go into the room and demand the understanding, and therefore we are actually waiting for dinner, everybody's there, demand that you come out? Do you go in there and you need just unplug the power cable and just shut down the whole computer?
Sounds like trouble. Yeah.
Sounds like trouble.
Yeah.
Or what do you do? Right? So knowing that the child is limbic first, at that point in time, if you try to establish the understanding, I spoke to you earlier, we are all waiting for you, get out right now, I think it's not going to work. Right? I propose that because the child is totally not going to comply, having already tried, a few times inviting the child to the dining table, you should just go ahead and have your dinner. Finish the dinner, wipe everything out, clean the dining table and everything else. And this parents might be difficult to do that. I was about to propose, just don't leave any dinner for the child. But if you want to, you can.
I would be very tempted to do that.
Yes. Right. But the point here, why are we trying to do it?
My wife might be listening in.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So it's up to the parents, right? How would they choose to respond? But the point here is, how are we going to help the child learn the consequences of his or her action, given that there was a prior conversation, right? And what kind of approach would you take thereafter to help with the understanding of the family situation? That's the question here, understanding, given this context, right? So guided by neuroscience, at the end of the day, if the child was angry or frustrated or fully engaged, fully lighted up in the limbic system, the last thing you want to do is to be limbic about it.
Right.
Like, for example, how dare you, we already agree on all these kind of things, get out of the room, or you go down there and you pull out the power plug. That's the last thing any adult, any parent want to do. Because in our line of work, limbic and limbic approach together, it's lose-lose situation.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So what instead we want to do is to play into a limbic space where the child is more than happy to listen to you. Right? Find a day later on in the night or another day to say, "Hey, look, we had an agreement yesterday. We are unhappy about the situation. We'd like to talk. Right? Can we have some time to talk?" In that space, when the child is a bit more calm, not limbically engaged, may not be angry or flustered up, you communicate the scenario, the situation, and express the dissatisfaction, how the situation is unacceptable. Reiterate certain family house rules, for example, and say that, look, if this happens again, this is what we are planning to do. What do you think about that? Right? And given the same scenario, for example, like don't leave any dinner. This would have been communicated in the conversation. right? And if that was agreed, you should just execute it, and then the child would know what to do, and maybe the child will now have to like start counting the demerit points, so to speak, and know how to put himself into place thereafter to start beginning to respect the family, or step up in household work, whatever it is.
Or he might choose to order some Grab food in.
Exactly.
Have his own food.
Exactly. But see, the point here is to establish the understanding. It only it takes a certain approach to help the child understand. But if you were to insist or establish an understanding while the child is actually playing the computer game, fully engaged with all his 7, 8 friends online at that point in time, you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
You're definitely not going to get it, right?
So it seems that what you're proposing so far would be a very reasonable option, which is for parents to recognize that when one is emotional, that is not the time to engage your child. Right?
You're thinking, quote unquote, from the limbic, right?
That's right, from the limbic point of view, right? So once you're emotional, once you're limbic, okay, that's it. Stay away. Let matters calm down, and then choose a time where both of you can agree to sit down and talk together. And during the time, agree that you would talk about it from a very logical point of view, without getting too emotional, and definitely without raising the decibels in the conversation, right? And then I think when that is done, it will probably help the child realize better that you're doing it for his or her good, and not as an emotional reaction to your own need that was not satisfied.
Yes, that's right. And following from that, like for example, don't raise the tone. It's also a strategy, because if you raise your tone, you're heightening your limbic engagement, right? And the child is going to be defensive. And the third strategy is basically the kind of questions you ask, right? So, for example, you may not want to ask, why were you behaving like that way?
Right.
As opposed to, what is it that made you do this way? Because we already had a prior conversation, right? Allow for room to enable the child to explain himself or herself, right? That's a third way of actually trying to establish that understanding, right? So that the child is not put in a position where straight away they go into a limbic. Actually, you want to have them go into the prefrontal, so that they will say, oh, okay, what I did was actually not inappropriate, right? So in neuroscience terminology, we want to help connect these neural pathways between the limbic and the prefrontal. So the more the adults can do that, we are like, like a habit, a behavior that we constantly do it, right? We keep asking them to go to the prefrontal, what made you do that? And they use the prefrontal faculty to consider the consequences or the scenarios. The more you do that, the better it is next time. They'll be able to like, oh, this is not respectful. This is unacceptable. And then they will, in your absence, automatically respond in that way, right? But you cannot expect, after having that one conversation, you expect that tomorrow, if it happens again, the child will automatically be respectful towards you, or the child will appreciate the situation in which you're in,
right?
Until they are repeated. It's just behavior, right? Conditioning behavior.
Right.
So the more you be able to condition the desired behavior, you reinforce it over and over again by many means, right? From like affirming praises, or going out for ice cream, having a talk about it again, and then say, hey, I noticed that today, or just now earlier, you actually give it some thought to your mom and go and help her wash the dishes, right? You affirm that, you catch them doing good, we call it. Like this is one of the another strategies. You catch them doing good. So you reinforce repeatedly the behaviors that's desired, right? And over time, they'll automatically just get into it. Yeah.
So it seems like we need to have good communication with them, which is clear, concise, and at the same time, we have to be also clear about the consequence, the C's, right?
The boundaries.
Boundaries, and we have to be consistent in implementing them.
Yes.
And not go according to our mood. Oh, today I feel good. Okay, you can do whatever you want. But another day I'm quite grumpy because of what happened at work, and therefore I'm coming down hard on you, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's a tall order, though.
Yeah.
While consistency is the way to go.
Yeah.
Because we're also human.
Yep, absolutely.
At the end of the day, like today, if I had a hard day at work, and for example, I need to be consistent, but like yesterday, and not the day before, right? Wow, it's very, it's a high.
Yeah, we'll have this interview another day.
No, I don't want. I cannot bring myself to talk to you.
I can't bring yourself to talk to me again.
So if that's the case, don't have to beat yourself. This is talking to the parents, right? You don't have to beat yourself for it, right? This yourself, you're tired, right? The least you could do is just say, look, I'm unhappy right now. I'm very tired. We need to have this conversation, right? Just go to your room or do your own thing. I'll talk to you about it another day, and then you just go do your own thing.
I think what you brought up just now is very important and very necessary, which is affirmation. Very often as parents, we forget to affirm the good that our kids have done and the good qualities that they have exhibited.
That's right.
Quite often, we are more likely to catch the negative behaviors and reprimand them for it, or even discipline them for it, or things like that, but we forget to affirm.
Yes.
I think that's the thing that many of us forget to
Very
do.
true. Yes, very true, very true. So, even to a point where a school, in particular in Singapore, actually instituted this whole approach of catching them doing good all around the school, and they continue doing that, right? And I think more so for us at home, where it's actually the most safe unit for having to reinforce, develop, positive behavior or desired behavior, respectful behavior, right? We want to constantly be catching our kids doing good. The desired behavior, meaning to say, if you hope that your child will be more respectful, or putting the laundry to the laundry basket, or putting the shoe as you come back, putting into the shoe cabinet, for example, right? The desired behavior, right? Then we want to catch them. Once they do that, then you affirm them, right? Whatever it may be, like managing their time, doing their homework on their own accord, taking their own initiative. Catch them doing good, as opposed to like, why are you not doing your homework again? Like, I noticed you actually did the homework just now, right?
Yeah, I think the other thing that we parents tend to say quite often, unfortunately, is, why are you always like that? Why do you always do this? Why do you always give us trouble like that?
Yes,
right? Yeah, I think
guilty as charged.
Guilty as charged. Yeah, that's right. So I think this is something that we parents we learn from experience as well, our own experience and trial and error. And I think over time we've realized, okay, these are not the things that we should be saying to our kids at any time.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
so just catch the behavior in a sense, reward, affirm good behavior. Talk about the bad behaviors, and also help them to then gradually process and connect the limbic and the prefrontal systems to help them realize what the consequences are of certain actions, and then from there, hopefully, we will be able to help them then develop the virtues.
Here comes the catch, right? All these things have to keep growing, have to keep doing.
That's right.
For a good, 10 years I mentioned earlier. Why I mentioned 10 years is because assuming at the onset of puberty, that's where the limbic system is fully developed. That's about what? For boys, it's about 11, 12 years old, we know, right? And girls a lot earlier, 9 to 10 years old, right? That's fully developed limbic system, right? Give it 10 years on fully developed prefrontal, we're talking about 25, right? So it so depends on families to families, right? So, for example, what affects the rate of maturing of the brain? Like things like nutrients, the things that you eat, your environment, whether or not it's conducive enough for the brain to develop. Or an extreme case would be if a child was actually in an environment constantly worrying about his or her safety. There's a lot of violence at home, a lot of abuse at home, for example. It's harder for the brain to develop positively, right? So in that sense, it affects the rate of maturing, right? So therefore, we need to be patient with ourselves, patient with the child, right? Because the rate of learning is different for every child, right? So we cannot expect that, you're already 16 years old, you're already 20 years old already, right? You should be able to know all these kind of things, right? Sometimes it's just different. And there's so many things to learn in our lives, from relationships to parenting, to whatever it is, right? So many things. So we got to manage our own expectations. So therefore, knowing that roughly give and take a 10-year window would be what I call a window of learning opportunity, a window of learning or window of opportunity. Every time when things don't work out the way in which you hope it will work out, or the child repeatedly you feel is not learning the things that he or she should be learning, right? Do you want to be frustrated about why am I doing so many things already, but I'm still not getting it, I'm still not seeing it, I still worry that kind of thing, right? Don't have to do that. As long as you know, hand on heart, you have done, is taught enough. I think the next step, especially when they enter secondary school, teenage years, the focus will be then to give them the opportunity to practice what you have taught. That means you talk less, because earlier years in primary school, you teach a lot. You say a lot of things, generally speaking. But by the time they reach adolescence, teenage years, secondary school, they want to be with their friends. Now, you don't want to let go, because this is the time really you need to be there to supervise their what they call exploration. They're learning to individuate, we call them, right? So you want it to be safe. So ask questions a lot. What made you want to do this? What you want to do? Why would you decide this and that? Right? Help them to go into the prefrontal to consider their options, right? Inculcate or cultivate opportunities of always coming back to ask you about things. How do you cultivate that? Right? And you have a 10-year window to watch them, execute it. Some of them may be wrong, but how do you facilitate unlearning or relearning? And keep going back and forth, until such time you have this habit form, right? The neural pathway that's being formed, such that in your absence they will execute behaviors or thought processes that are positive, conducive, safe for them, right? To deal with the world, to manage the relationships. Right?
So it seems that it is very important to provide the right factors, the right environment for them to grow, not just during the teenage years, but way before that, right? So perhaps, would you like to share with us some of the positive factors that we can put in place in the family, from our marital relationships, our relationship with our children, and to the physical environment and physical foods, perhaps even that that we expose them to? What can we do then to promote this positive environment for them to flourish in?
Yeah. So we mentioned earlier already about the food, the nutrition, right? That's for the purposes of helping the child develop in a way that will enhance brain learning, whole brain learning, we call it, right? So that's one. Obviously, from family to family, resources vary, right? Nonetheless, we look out for what the child consumes, right? So that's one. The other one is their environment, meaning to say when they're at home, how conducive it is for them to make mistakes, right? How do we look at mistakes? How do we talk about mistakes? How would we, as a result of that, the potential of making mistakes, how do we encourage them to come back to us to talk about it without fearing that, oh, if I talk about this, this is something that's going to be done to me or whatever. So now they begin to be alert every time when that happens. How do you cultivate an environment where it's okay or safe for me to come and talk to you about whatever I feel that I'm talking about? Obviously, the parental relationship also matters, right? Because how much mom and dad align with each other, right? So, are there household rules, for example? Are they on the same page on that one, right? Sometimes dad may have one household rules, but mom has another household rules. So this gives the child an opportunity to what we call triangulate the parents, or play one parent against the other, right? If parents are not communicating well, then if they don't even check in with the other parent, then they'll take the parent for a ride. Then they will, what we call sometimes assume the power, quote unquote, in the relationship or in the family situation, where they try to do things the way they feel is right, get what they want, but affect the relationship.
Yeah, it's a very common tactic. Very common tactic. Yeah, so which is why one of the things I've learned to say to my children every time they ask about something, and my common answer would be, "What did mom say?"
Yes. Yeah, check back your mom.
Never contradict your wife.
Yes. Or vice versa, actually.
Or vice versa, yeah, that too, yeah. So I think what they've brought up so far is so important, right? And if I may summarize it, it'll be like the ABCs, A is to affirm our children appropriately. B is to really be there for them, right? Just be there so that we can actually be there for them and with them in good times and in bad times, yeah. C is to communicate with them well and provide the safe space for them to be able to be confident in expressing themselves to us so that we can know what's happening in their lives and be able to journey with them through their life from young. And then I think you mentioned this thing about the discipline, being consistent in our discipline as a husband and wife is very important. And then being empathetic towards how they are feeling with all the limbic system being overcharged and everything, and the prefrontal cortex not being well developed. And finally, of course, forgiveness, right? Because things sure to go wrong. Certainly, I mean, I've made mistakes as a parent many times, right? Yes. And I've had to ask for forgiveness from my wife and from my children too.
Yes. Nicely framed, John. Yeah, maybe a comment about this forgiveness things that you highlight. Working with our kids, there's this thing called developmental forgiveness, right? So what we mean by this is this: because they are always limbic first, and they can be very limbically charged. So sometimes they take to heart a lot of things that we rationally think that there's nothing to it, but they are obviously taking to heart, and it sometimes burdens them. Maybe they feel like angered, or feel like unfair, unjust, that kind of thing, right? So as an adult or somebody who has fully developed prefrontal, will say, I didn't do anything wrong, I don't have to say sorry, I don't ask for forgiveness, But for a child, especially younger children, right, it's important for them to hear it, right? Will you forgive me? I'm sorry, right? That's why I say it's developmental apology, developmental forgiveness, meaning to say it's what they need at that point in time for their limbic to absorb, be connected to the situation, to you, to recognize that it's okay even if I'm wrong, but you still love me, or you're still there for me, you're still present.
It's unconditional love, right? It's
but you can't say it, you see, because they need to feel it more than actually to understand it. But when you have an opportunity later on, maybe even later on when they grow up, for example, you want to always articulate that, right? Such that they now register it even better, deeper, more appropriate, because developmentally they are more able to understand what was all that about, right? Yeah. So it's okay to offer apology. It's okay to seek forgiveness for the purposes of attending to them developmentally. The younger they are, the more we want to be open to doing that. Yeah.
Very good. Well, it looks like it's been a very, very interesting and exciting conversation we've been having.
I hope so.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Now,
Yes.
perhaps before we end this episode, I'm wondering whether you have any other tips you'd like to share with our Catholic parents, And I think besides what we've discussed so far, also from the points of view of practicing our faith in the family, which is so vital and so important, right? When we need God at the center of our life. So I think A, B, C, D, E, F, now we have G, right? We need God in our lives in order to really guide our family through, because there's, in my experience, there have been so many times and there have been so many, in a sense, so-called conflicts that I am not able to handle. And all I can do is kneel down and really ask the Lord to guide and to be there for our family and to really make things go right again. Because it's really beyond us sometimes.
It is. It's actually a lot of times beyond us, because our kid will grow up, even with their child, they are their own person. So in the context of our discussion, appreciating the limbic and the prefrontal, I was thinking as Catholic parents as well to help our child experience the faith more, because they are primarily limbic, right? Again, they are not to say they're not prefrontal. They are able to activate the prefrontal, but at that point in time, at the moment, instinctually, they are always limbic first. Right? How can they make sense of their faith applied into family life, applied into schoolwork, applied into relationships? Right? That needs to be caught more than taught. Right? So how to make them feel that actually this is my faith in action? Right? So one example could be that if the developmental apology was understood, seeking forgiveness, offering that, then this could be a possibility that the child felt the forgiveness of Christ, right? More than to be taught about having to forgive my siblings or forgive each other, right? Because they felt it, and being so burdened by the mistakes, that they've done, or you have unknowingly created that unhappiness, right? And you offered that developmental apology. I think the child will remember a lot more strongly than having to remember the times that you taught them to be forgiving, So mindful of the fact that they are always limbic first, how can we express our God experience in the felt way?
Very, very important. I think this reminds me of something that happened in my teenage years when I was rebellious. And one time my mom actually said, John, I'm not too sure what got into you. But whatever it is, just remember, I will always love you no matter what. And up to today, that hit me. That hit me very hard. All right, and that was I would say my turning point when I realized that my mother actually loved me no matter what, despite my horrendous behavior as a teenager. And I think that really helped so much. And like you said, that we experience Christ's forgiving love through our parents. And I think that helped a lot.
A lot, right? And you will always remember for the rest of your life. Yeah, because they are always limbic first.
Yes.
How can we help them feel that, catch that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Nicholas. I think it's been a very, very, very rewarding time with you, and I'm sure many of our listeners, Catholic parents, would have benefited from this podcast. Yes. Yeah. So, dear friends, we thank you very much for joining us this episode where we interviewed Mr. Nicholas Lim on how to manage our teenagers when they are rebellious, right? So I hope and I trust and pray that this would have given us a lot more ammunition as parents to be able to handle this rather challenging and difficult period of our lives. But with God's grace, we can do it. So thank you very much, Nicholas, for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we look forward to having you again. Okay, so till we meet again, take care and God bless you and the family always. Bye for now.